Parents, students, guests, thank you all for joining us here today. It is really a pleasure to see all of you. There's so many familiar faces in the room and so many new faces as well. And it just makes me very, very happy to see everyone here and that we can share this success and this event with you. I hope that today will be a very big sharing and learning opportunity for all of us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anushka Chugani. I am the Director of Operations at Hale Education Group. In terms of Hale, we work with our students not just as educational consultants, but as mentors. So our youngest students, and you may have met some other students here today, are as young as grade 9. We do not work to just instruct our students. We're here to construct. I once had a teacher who told me that it's not about what you put into a student that matters. It's about what you bring out of them. And that really is the essence of what we do here at Hale. You can see to my left, there's an infographic outlining just a few of our major statistics for this past year. We had students accepted to over 137 US universities, in addition to 2 acceptances to Harvard, a number to Columbia, Stanford, Princeton, and there's 5 Ivy Leagues in total. I'm not going to list them all. The details are all on the infographic. We also had students receive a total of over 70 million dirhams in scholarships from 2015. So that has been a tremendous achievement, not just for Hale, but for all of our students here in the UAE. Today, at the Ivy Insider, we have 5 outstanding students who are willing to actually share their stories, their successes, their feelings with you. So I will let them do that in the next few minutes. I would like to introduce Peter Davas, the founder and managing director of Hale Education Group, who will be moderating today's panel.
A little taller than Anushka. Okay, thank you, Anushka, for the kind introduction. Thank you all for coming. Thank you most of all to our panelists. What's incredible about our group today is just how amazing these young people are, truly exceptional. I feel inspired when I meet students who are totally determined to personal advancement, to pushing their intellectual boundaries, to exploring intellectual curiosity. So I think back to when I was their age, and I wasn't doing 1/3 of what they've achieved. So I think we're all very privileged to have this wonderful group of students here today, and also privileged to hear about their experiences, because I think we may see the universities that they're enrolling in here on their placards and think that, wow, it must have been smooth sailing, it must have been very easy, they must have faced no challenges, but that nothing could be further from the truth. So today you're going to hear about their own challenges, their own insights, and I think it's going to offer a very different type of perspective maybe than we're used to hearing from just admissions officers or counselors. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and also my co-moderator, Murat, at the end. So if you could just introduce yourself, your name, where you're currently studying, and where you will enroll in the fall.
I'm Alessandra. I go to Barton College, Abu Dhabi, and I'm going to go to Harvard in the fall.
I'm Juliet. I go to Jess Arabian Ranches, and I'm going to Columbia.
I'm Insia. I go to Jumeirah College, and next year I'm going to Tufts University.
I'm Dhruv. I go to DIA, and next year I'll be going to the University of Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Sean. I go to St. Christopher's School in Bahrain, and next year I'll be joining Columbia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Murad. I'm one of the counselors in the Dubai office. I graduated from Yale College. I've been working with these students as well over the past, 2 years. I was a religious studies major, but I was also pre-med. It's kind of weird. I would be happy to talk to people at the end if you're interested in the medical field in the US. I know it's a little bit different. And yeah, so let's get started.
So Alessandra, I think we can start with you. I think we both share a common Mediterranean heritage, a love for classical history, and we share something else now, which is the Crimson Connection. So I'd like to know, where did you think you would be today if we go back a year ago? I believe you went to Harvard for a tour, but you kind of skipped it.
I skipped it because I didn't think I had a chance. So a year ago, I would have thought I'd be at Brown. I really wanted to go to Brown. I applied ED, but I got deferred. And then, yeah, I got into Harvard and Brown.
So when you think about ever applying to Harvard, did you think about applying to Harvard? Did you think it was a realistic chance? Did you think you were competitive enough? Or did you have doubts in your mind? And if so, how did you get over those doubts and fears?
Harvard wasn't on my list at first. I didn't think I was gonna get in. I didn't think I was competitive enough. So I kind of skipped it and I applied to other schools. And then when I got the fit from Brown, I thought, I kind of want to apply to Harvard. I might as well. So I applied, and I got in somehow.
I think one of the recurring themes we have here on this panel, I think with the exception of Incia, who was accepted ED round 2, right? Everybody was either deferred or denied by their first choice in the early rounds. Is that correct? Maybe Sean, you could tell us a little bit about that feeling when I think you applied to Yale, right?
That's right. So I applied early action to Yale and I was rejected. And that was crushing initially because I didn't think I had a chance of getting into top colleges. But then between that time period, between when I found out that I was rejected and the January 1st deadline, I worked harder on my essays and realized that I needed to refine some of them in order to perfect my application. So once I did that, thankfully I managed to get into Columbia, and I'm really excited to go there now.
So a follow-up on that, Sean, because I remember working with you when the Yale rejection came through, and we were both pretty disappointed by it, right? How did you get over that kind of mental block of, maybe thinking, wow, if Yale didn't take me, no one else will? Because I know that sometimes, rejections, if else, can be a little bit, difficult. So you said you perfected the essays, you said you worked on some things, but mentally, what kept you, moving? You had worked so hard up to that point to apply to Yale, right? That was the first application. What kept you going after that?
The thing is, a lot of these colleges are quite similar. They're obviously very different in their own respects, but they have similarities. And I realized that, Yale isn't the only college in America, and I probably wasn't a great fit for them, which is why they rejected me, because fit is really important with a lot of these colleges. So, I continued to do my research and looked at a variety of different colleges, Columbia being one of them, and I really emphasized fit and, emphasized that in my essays and made sure that, I was certain that the colleges that I'm applying to are ones where I'll fit in. So I did end up cutting a few schools from my list after I was rejected because I realized that maybe I'm not the best fit for those schools. And I even added a few schools once I realized that, I think I'd fit in more here. Columbia wasn't my top choice at the beginning of the application process, but by December-ish, I was pretty certain that it was one of my top choices.
Great. When it comes to fit, this is a word that we use in our daily language at Hale Education Group. And I think what really separates the students that are actually accepted to the top schools from the ones that are rejected is this concept of fit, right? Is the university culturally, academically appropriate for the student that's applying there? And that comes out in the supplementary questions and also during the interview. So Juliet, I think one of the defining moments for you is when you had your Columbia interview and you got some very positive feedback. Mm-hmm. So can you tell all of us how you prepared for that interview, what kind of questions you were asked, and why did the admissions officer believe that you were such a good fit for Columbia University?
So I had my interview around January time. It was a Skype interview, and it was really laid back. I was really stressed out for it at first, so I'd prepared a lot in advance. I kind of just looked up the kind of questions they would ask me online, but it ended up being a lot more laid back. He just wanted to get a sense of who I was, what I would contribute to Columbia. And Columbia was actually one of my top choices, so I had a really, really good reason for wanting to go there. And I think that really came out in my interview because I was able to pinpoint the exact reasons why I wanted to go, and he was able to kind of understand why I wanted to go, and he saw that I had a clear understanding of what Columbia is about. For example, their core curriculum is very unique to Columbia, and that was something I talked about. So I guess my piece of advice would be to really understand why you want to go and kind of convey that to the interviewer, and then he or she will probably understand if you're a good fit or not.
What are some of the qualitative factors that led you to Columbia other than the core curriculum?
Well, I visited the campus and I just got a gut feeling. I don't know. I've moved around 8 times to different countries across different continents. So I really liked how Columbia was in New York City. It's like an international hub. So for me, I felt really at home there because I just felt like Columbia was going to be really, really diverse in itself, but then outside of that, you have New York City as well. So for me, that was a big like factor that influenced my decision. And that's it. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great answer. And Sia, I think Tufts, a very exciting school and a wonderful fit for you based on your interest in education, but you did something a little bit different, which is you applied early decision round 2.
Yeah.
And could you maybe talk to the students about ED round 2? What is ED? I don't think everybody knows that that's actually an option at some universities. And what led you to make that decision after the initial early action, early decision acceptances and rejections came out?
So I actually did my standardized tests a lot later on than I'd initially planned. So if anybody is a procrastinator, then I would recommend ED round 2. No, but realistically speaking, ED round 2 is an option that few universities in the US actually do offer, and it's definitely something that you should all consider when it comes to, say, in the UK systems over here in the UAE, if your predicted grades aren't what you want them to be and you want to sort of bump up those scores, if, as I said, your standardized test scores are running a bit late, things like that, ED round 2 is definitely another option for you to consider. And it was also another reason as to why, Tufts was really up there in the rankings for me, because they understood that not all students come to that final decision of wanting to be bound to a university in October or November. And that's why I was really happy to have submitted my ED round 2 application in January.
So I have a question for Dhruv. Speaking of fit, speaking of making your choice. So Dhruv applied to engineering programs, which even if the US offers some flexibility with what you want to study, and they give you the first 2 years to explore your different majors. For engineers, it's a little bit different, because if you think you want to be an engineer, you have to apply specifically to schools of engineering. For you, Dhruv, as an engineering applicant, what were some of the challenges you faced being, South Asian engineer? Of course, you were, already competing against a very overrepresented group in the admissions process. So if you can talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. And what Murat mentioned is very, very true. In most universities, they have a sort of cap on the minorities, because firstly, the US citizens do have a priority in the admissions process, and international students are already at that disadvantage. But given the number of South Asian, Indian, Chinese, Korean applicants that do apply to these selective universities, there tends to be an overrepresentation, especially considering how qualified this group tends to be. Only thing I had to do is to sort of set myself apart from this, which I think may have worked, was I found something that I liked really, really early back, maybe in grade 8, and I just stuck with it, and I made sure that I didn't let any of my other sort of school priorities, test scores, these other external factors not get in my way of success in a way in some of these things, because I developed an interest in drones and robotics at a very, very, very early age, and I just stuck with it. If I wanted to learn about something, there's a ton of material online. You don't have to wait to take that physics course in year 11. You can take it online and just get with it. So I think my main sort of piece of advice would be, in terms of fit, you have to start early, and the moment that an idea pops in your head, do not reject it for anything else, because it is easily one of the most valuable things. I mean, the universe has put that idea in your head. It's your duty to make sure that you take it to completion, no matter how skeptical you are about how it'll work. Will it affect my school? This, that. Honestly, just go for it.
Can you talk about some of the things you did with the drones and just take us through that? Because I know you've been very successful over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I've been all right. Yeah, but with drones and stuff, so I competed in a lot of drone competitions, and I basically made a drone called Firefly, which after the Address Hotel fire, I was kind of inspired by it. That's one of the few problems that plague Dubai. We live a pretty perfect life, except for the fact that these building fires happen almost like every dozen weeks in JLT in the Address Hotel, and that was such a bad time for it to happen, especially before New Year's. So I sort of built an autonomous drone that used a camera in order to understand its environment. So firefighters could use this technology in order to save stranded people inside buildings. And I think that's what paid off. The fact that regardless of what kind of idea it was, the fact that I took it up, and drones are drones, unlike a lot of robotics, tend to be very, very difficult in the sense that, you know, if you tell a robot with wheels to move front, it'll move forward 2 meters. If you tell the drone to move forward, it'll move up, down, left, right, diagonal, in between dimensions. It's absolutely insane. So I don't know, you just have to get used to failing and get used to not doing things right and things not working out and seeing time pass away as you make 1% of progress, but know that towards the end, it will all pay off. 3% of progress in something that you love doing is more than, 120% of progress in something that you really don't. So that would just be my advice, yeah.
If I can just make a comment, I think, Drew, out of all the students I've met over the past 5 years, you exemplified this passion for learning, which is totally, it blows my mind how much you invested personally, intellectually into your drone programming and design. So Drew is actually quite modest. He entered the Google Science Fair, and out of 12,000 applicants, his project was chosen as one of the top 50, and also the only finalist from the Middle East. So he's really, yes, thank you. So, what I loved about working with Drew was not just his incredible energy and his incredible love for what he was doing, but he was so passionate about his drones that actually his academic work would suffer. So this is something we see typically the opposite, where we have so many students who are emphasizing academics at the expense of any kind of other pursuit, whether it's sports, whether it's extracurricular activities. But I think that's what made you such a genuine and successful candidate, is that you are not, just aiming for that 45 in the IB. Okay, maybe you got a few points less or even more than a few points less, but what you actually had to show for your experience was much more impressive and, totally unsurpassed as far as anything I've come across. So kudos to you and well done. I think, Alessandra, we speak about passion, so we'll go to you, and you're very passionate about medicine. Now, you have done a lot of work. I'll let you talk about your own work with medicine and research. And I want you to talk about, as a British curriculum student, why you would still be attracted to applying to US universities if you want to be a doctor, where in the UK you can apply for direct entry into a medical education. It's much more straightforward, it's much more direct, and it's a shorter process.
Well, personally, I don't just want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. I want to do work in neurobiology. I want to do a lot of different things. So going directly into medicine didn't really make sense for me. But also, American universities, US universities, they have research facilities and they're incredible. They have the best professors, and you get to talk to them like on a daily basis. You get to do research with them. So I think that's what attracted me to the universities in the US rather than the UK. Mainly just this idea of being able to do research and making a difference in someone's life, maybe.
And can you talk a little bit about your experience last summer at Brown's Alpert Medical School and how that maybe crystallized your interest in a medical education in the US? And what did you learn from that experience? What was it like?
So I went to Brown for a week and I did a course called A Week in the Life of a Medical Student. So I basically went to lectures and they obviously talked about the digestive system, the circulatory system, and then we also went in the anatomy lab, which was like the highlight of the whole week. So we got to actually see a dissection and hold human brains and things. It sounds morbid, but it was so interesting. Because as a doctor, I knew that's a huge thing. That's a very daunting experience, going in the anatomy lab, especially when you first start medical school and you're thrown in the anatomy lab, you have to dissect open a dead body, and it can be terrifying. So I wanted to see what it felt like. I wanted to see whether I was suitable for that kind of thing, and I really enjoyed it. It strengthened my passion for medicine. I know that that's what I want to do now. So yeah.
I saw Sean nod to that, when we talked about passion and researching. Maybe we can go, Peter, and have everyone talk about why the US for them. I think that would be good. So we'll start with Sean.
All right, yeah, sure. So I didn't have the typical US applicant journey in the sense that I was almost certain that I wanted to go to the UK at the start of grade 11 when I started my GCSEs. and because my school is a British school and they send, I think, 80% of the year group to the UK. But it's once I realized that the US was much more liberal in terms of what you can do and the subjects you can take, that I realized that maybe the US was best for me, because in the UK you're restricted to the one field that you want to do, because I'm really interested in mathematics and economics, but in the UK there isn't really a field or a subject where I'd be able to take courses in both and explore them both. And also, the US is also much more interactive in the sense that you have a greater sense of community because you're much closer to your professors and the student body as a whole. Whereas in the UK, you attend a few lectures and then you go back to your dorm, and then it's a pretty routine life in that sense. And that's mainly why I applied to the US.
Yeah, so for a long time I've been interested in startups and entrepreneurship and making my own company in a sense. And the thing about a UK college life, while it is very, very reputed, is that you lose a sense of touch in the other fields, because understand that when you take an engineering program in the US, the last time you've taken an English class is in high school. So over those 4 years, you have high school English plus amazing mathematics, but that won't. For an entrepreneur, you have to have this diverse skill set that is only accessible in the US, and which is why it is known for entrepreneurship. Like, the biggest companies are located in the US for reasons, because people are groomed to think in a certain way that allows us to pursue such entrepreneurial ambitions, and that's why I chose US over the UK.
For me, it's more the fact that, so I'm a US citizen, and so one aspect of it was sort of the cost. But aside from that, it's exactly like Dhruv and Sean already said, the US system definitely allows you to explore a lot more aspects of education than the UK system allows you to. And I'm someone who definitely wants to take advantage of my education and all educational opportunities across my path. So when it comes to, say, core curriculums in different US universities, they explore all different subjects. So they have language requirements, writing requirements, mathematics requirements, science requirements, and indulging in all of these different subjects and ensuring that you are taking the opportunity to explore every single option. I think that's definitely something that appealed to me. So yeah, definitely. And it's also the fact that, just like these two said, if you're unsure about what you want to study, which is definitely what I am right now, then you should most probably consider the US, because it's so open and understanding that students at such a young age cannot make such, huge decisions. So that's definitely an aspect that I took into consideration.
Mm-hmm. My reason's pretty much the same. I'm from Belgium. Both my parents studied there as well. It was a really, really good university, and they wanted me to go there as well. But I just didn't really want to let go of all the subjects I was passionate about. I still don't know what exactly I want to study, so going to the US made really good sense, because I can still take classes in a whole variety of different subject areas. And for me, I think that's really important, because I'm someone who does really like to keep my options open and explore different interests of mine. So that was a big factor. And then also, the American college experience, it's pretty cool too. I like the whole idea of school spirit. It builds a community a lot more as well. And I feel like I would feel very at home there, because like I said before, I've moved around a lot. So although I'm from Belgium, my roots are there, but I don't feel at home there. So I think being in a place that really has such a good emphasis on community atmosphere, that was something I really valued in the US.
And Juliet, following up on that with you specifically, because a question that I get often from parents is, do you help our students figure out what they want to do? Do you offer psychometric testing, things like that? A couple of parents asked me that outside. Juliet actually, she went to the Wharton Leadership in Business summer program because she was pretty set on doing business, and that's what she wanted. But you had a little bit of a change in heart, right? You actually did not end up applying to the University of Pennsylvania in the end. She thought it was her top choice, again, because of the very renowned business program. It is okay to change your mind, and this is something we emphasize. But Juliet, if you can talk a little bit more about that. So what was your thought process, changing your mind and maybe basically reassessing everything you thought you knew before you actually chose your school list?
Mm-hmm. So I was really sure I wanted to go into business, and I was looking at applying early decision to Wharton. But I wasn't 100% sure, and I knew myself, and I knew that I changed my mind a lot, and I have such varied interests. So Hale helped me write my essays to apply to a really selective college program called LBW, Leadership in the Business World. If anyone's interested in business, that's I really recommend that. So I went there, and I met a lot of great people, and I had a really, really good experience. But it kind of showed me that Wharton was very, very pre-professional. And while that's great for some people, it really wasn't for me. So I'm really happy that I went there because I got to see the kind of atmosphere that it was like. And people had told me before that oh, every single Ivy League has a different atmosphere, but I never really understood it until I was actually there. So I went to Columbia right after UPenn, and I saw that Columbia was a lot more intellectually focused, whereas UPenn was, or maybe it's just Wharton, but it was very pre-professional. So that's kind of how I made my decision. And I'm not saying that Wharton's bad, it's just, it wasn't for me. So Wharton's amazing. And if that's for you, then it's a great school as well. So yeah.
Why do I want to go to US? It's, as I said, mainly it's the research. I'm really passionate about the research. I want to work with stem cells in the brain and see whether I can genetically engineer a brain in a lab. So that's my aim. And I know that in the US, I'll be able to pursue this stream, whereas in the UK, I'd have to go to medical school. And obviously, I'm happy. I'm going to go to medical school eventually, but I wouldn't be able to do this part. I wouldn't be able to do research. And also, I'm kind of a math geek, and so I want to do math as well as all the other things. I might major maths as well as neurobiology. So it keeps my option open, and I get to do everything I like. So that's why I really like the US.
I think that's absolutely, everything is just so insightful, all the panelists who shared their thoughts. And I can also add, as a student myself some time ago who studied at both Oxford and Harvard, it's just a completely different philosophy when it comes to education, a different approach to education. I found that when I was in the UK, the focus was on academic tuition, so teaching you a specific subject. And really the education stopped there. Whereas in the US, the focus was on personal development. So experiential learning, independent research, study abroad, co-op initiatives, extracurricular opportunities, speaker series, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe that US universities really prepare you for life, where British universities prepare you more for proficiency in one subject or another. And that's coming from my own personal experience. And I think you cannot compare the two also, not only in terms of flexibility, but resources. So the fact that US universities are dominated by private education, so all the Ivy League schools are private, that means that they're not relying on government funds the same way UK universities are, and it means that they're much, much more wealthy. So in the UK, you have 3 universities that have an endowment of $1 billion or more. In the US, you have 76 universities that have at least $1 billion or more. Even if you go to Oxford or Cambridge, you may end up going to a poor college, which is not going to have great facilities, maybe not be very strong in the subject you apply for. So I think when it comes to assessing your options, you need to look at the entire picture. Another question I get all the time now is about Trump, and are they going to tighten up the H-1 visas, which is an employment visa, which is a little separate from student visas. But if you look at what the UK has actually implemented in terms of immigration reforms, it's virtually impossible for a non-EU citizen at this point to stay past graduation date unless they make a very, very high starting salary, which is almost impossible to achieve. Where in the US, if you study a STEM field, you can stay on your student visa, be legally employed for up to 3 years. So that has not changed. So there's a much more welcoming environment in terms of professional development and opportunities for students to stay after they graduate. But that was really great. I think, Sean, I'd like to take it back to you, because I think as one of the students here, you also have interest in both math and business. So can you talk a little bit about the work you've done up until now and how you hope to take advantage of that? And also, I'd like to ask you one more question. You were strongly considering very small liberal arts schools. And if you can say why, as opposed to obviously big national universities, that was the case. And what did you think what could you have hoped to achieve from that experience?
Yeah, sure. So just like Alessandro, I'm a math geek as well, and I'm proud of it. But I'm also really interested in economics, and I feel like there's a huge intersection between the two of them. And like I previously said, that's not really emphasized in the UK, whereas it's really emphasized in the US, especially in the field that I'd like to go into, which is financial engineering. And the reason, the things that I've done to sort of support my application in terms of math and economics is I've been an economic researcher at a think tank in Bahrain, where I look at geopolitics and economic interactions between various GCC states and other Arab states as well. And I've also done a lot of math work in the sense that I've taken part in some Olympiads, and I've attended summer programs to do with maths as well. And you know, by completing the research, first of all, as well as taking part in these programs, I've sort of found areas that I'm really comfortable with. And by emphasizing those in my applications, the areas that I'm interested in are game theory and probability theory. So I really emphasize that in my application, and you know, I highlighted it to the admissions officers, and I had the privilege of talking to my admissions officer back in April when I visited Columbia, and she emphasized the fact that it was because I was a great fit for the program, financial engineering, that's one of the reasons that they actually accepted me. It's the fact that, you know, I molded my application in a way where I showed them that I had all the credentials and all the skills in both mathematics and economics to excel at Columbia. And now the other question Peter asked me was, why is it that I'm interested in liberal arts colleges over bigger national universities? And I feel like liberal arts colleges prepare, especially at an undergraduate level, really prepare you, give you the right skill set to excel when you do your master's or your PhD. Because I feel like your undergraduate education should be all about exploration in various different fields. Some people may disagree and think that it's more about your pre-professional education that's more important, but I feel like your undergraduate education should be primarily about exploration. And you know, because I'm interested in mathematics, a lot of my friends told me that I should apply to MIT, Caltech, and all these big math universities, but I didn't end up applying to them primarily because I didn't want to be restrained to solely mathematics. I want to, you know, take various courses in the humanities as well. And I feel like at a liberal arts college, that's much easier to do and much easier to achieve because they emphasize an education in a broad range of fields.
I have a question for Insia, banking on this. So you're very passionate about education policy, Insia, and you mentioned that you don't know what you want to study, but you know very well what you want to do with your life, right? That is one of the things that I think struck all of the counselors at Hale, that you were very passionate about that one issue. How do you think, again, talking about this idea of a liberal, well-rounded education, how do you think going to the US is going to help you get to that goal of yours, of being an avid advocate of education policy?
So talking specifically about Tufts for myself, I've already started searching up courses and classes that I want to be a part of. And what I love so much about these courses is that they're not specific to just one subject. They explore anthropology and sociology, psychology and English, all of these different subjects, which I'm extremely passionate about. And then it's sort of the collection of all of these subjects into one single class, which you can take every semester. And so that's definitely something that I really admire about US universities and Tufts specifically, because it allows students to just take advantage of every single learning opportunity that they have. So that definitely prepares me for my pursuit of a master's degree in education, because I specifically want to work in education policy. So I can take classes in sociology and anthropology, and in addition to that, I can take classes in IR and politics in order to understand, international views on education rights. So specifically, I want to work in Pakistan and the Middle East and countries in Asia and Africa. And I think that by having an undergraduate education in the US, I'll definitely be able to explore all of these classes in the first 2 years before I finally have to decide my major in the third year. So that's definitely something that was very appealing to me.
I think a lot of the audience members here are looking up at the wonderful schools you're attending, the names on the placards, and thinking that probably this was all easy, right? It was a breeze. It was something taken for granted. You're all going to get into a fantastic school, which really wasn't the case. So I was wondering if each of the panelists, starting with Alessandra, could share maybe their lowest moment in the process. So when did they feel the worst, and how did they deal with that?
So I think the worst moment was when I got rejected, well, the third from Brown. It crushed me. And then the whole waiting. So obviously in first term, you have a lot to do. You have to write college essays. You have to submit applications and things. And so your day is so full of things. You don't really have time to think about the future. And then second term comes along and you're not quite as busy and you have time to think about the universities you apply to, all your essays, you look at them over and over again, or at least that was the case with me. And I thought, oh no, I made this mistake. I didn't want to say this. I want to say something else. So the waiting was the worst part. I think from January onwards, it was hard to cope, yeah, because my days weren't quite as full and I had time to think about my mistakes. And yeah, that was the worst part, I think.
So like Sean, I also applied early action to Yale. I was between Yale and Columbia because I thought my only chance of getting into like a top school would be if I applied early. And I was so indecisive, so I applied early action just because it was non-binding, although I really, really loved both schools, so I was very, very upset when I got deferred. And I didn't change my list of schools or anything, I just kept my faith up, I guess. The waiting was definitely hard. But what was worse was the fact that, well, since I go to a British school, most of the people in my school apply to UK universities, and they get acceptances on a rolling basis. So people were getting accepted every single week to different places. And my school calls that uni fever because you hear all these people getting accepted to different places, and I don't know, I guess it kind of puts pressure on you, especially if you have to wait until a certain date. So I guess the most important thing is just to be patient and just to have faith and know that a lot of it has to do with luck as well. So I didn't get into Yale, but then I did get into Columbia. I didn't get into Tufts as well. So you never know. It depends on the admissions counselor reading your application. So yeah, just keep your faith up, I guess.
So as an ED applicant, I think the hardest part for me was actually withdrawing all of my other applications. And I know that sounds weird because Tufts was definitely up there for me. It was a perfect school for me. And when I visited last summer, then I definitely saw myself living there for the next 4 years of my life. So I got the decision and I came into Hale and they said, okay, so probably withdraw all of your other applications. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that when I get home, no big deal. So I go home and I open up each of my different university portals. And I was sat there and I was thinking, what if I'd gotten into that university? And I think that that's definitely something, if you're considering doing early decision, then yes, of course it was difficult, but I came to the realization that Tufts is the perfect school for me. I fit in as a student over there. I fit in as a resident of Boston. And so when you are applying to a university early decision, then you need to make sure that it is a binding decision. So you need to make sure that it is the perfect university for you, because if you get in, then it's going to be, and you're not happy with your decision, then it is going to be extremely difficult for you to withdraw all of your other applications, and you might try to find loopholes and things like that to try and get out of this legal binding thing. But no, that wasn't the case for me. It was, it was upsetting, but I feel like a lot of people do go through that process of thinking, oh, what if this, what if that? But I think that if you apply early decision somewhere, then you're definitely meant to go to that school, and that was definitely the case for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the hardest part of the entire admissions process for me was, for a long time, like most engineering students, I think MIT was my dream squared school. So Iron Man went there, and a ton of other amazing people went to MIT. It was my dream school. MIT was the earliest one to come out. It was on Pi Day, and I ended up getting rejected. And that was obviously very, very disappointing because, you've dreamed about this place for so long, and every time you look up best engineering school, it's up there, it's #1. And you're just oh, I wish I went there. But then as you come closer to the admissions process, and this will happen to anyone who's maybe more than a year away from this, you start learning that it's not so much about rankings and a lot about the culture of the school. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. I loved MIT from the youngest age because I had no idea what a culture of the school was. I thought, I mean, once I go there, I'm ready to get, educated by some Nobel Prize professors, and I can't wait for that stuff. Obviously, as you come closer to applying, you understand that it's a lot more than that. There's so many things that, to the point, I mean, for me right now, it's not so much about being educated by Nobel Prize professors, but rather about meeting these completely different people who are, business-minded and liberal arts-minded, that motivated me, and that I understood that MIT wasn't the perfect fit for me. It's a very technological school, very, very, very focused on research. And as I got closer to Ivy Day and the other amazing decisions that everyone else got, I don't know, it just feels so good to understand that I had a rise after that fall of MIT. So that was honestly the worst part. Yeah.
I think the others have really emphasized the pain of getting rejected by your top school. So I'll talk about another low point in the application process, which was after I found out my first SAT score. So this was when I was in 10th grade. So this was before I joined Hale. So I took the SAT for the first time, and back then I was really naive, and I thought that the SAT was the end-all. If you get that 2400, you're going to Harvard and MIT and stuff. But that's obviously not the case, but I didn't know that at the time. So I ended up getting a score that was subpar, and I wasn't happy with it, especially because a lot of people I knew had way higher scores. But then, after that, I realized that standardized testing is not as important as many people think it is. As long as you're above a certain threshold, you'll do fine. But, it's not worth it if you've got a 2300 or something, it's not worth it to strive for that 2400. You should really emphasize other parts of your application. And once I talked to Hale, they really emphasized that because I wanted to pursue, I wanted to take more standardized tests to improve my score because I wasn't happy with it. But then they told me that it wasn't the best option at the time.
So for me, I'm just, the lowest part of the application process for me, and this will have a follow-up question for you guys. I remember one day I was overwhelmed by everything. It was October of my senior year. I was studying for my APs, had to study for the SATs. I was on a school play, and there came a point when I was like, I'm gonna just give everything up. I'm gonna stay in Mexico, which is where I grew up, and I'm gonna go to school here. It is not worth it. Why work so hard for something that I don't even know is gonna happen? So for you guys, of course, we have here Head Girl, we have someone who's done research at a think tank, we have someone who, invented an incredible drone. How do you manage everything in your life, which is honestly a ton, with a very strenuous and competitive application process? Some of these applications are super long. Stanford has 6 additional essays to the common application essay. The Penn essay is 700 words or so. So how did you manage everything, the application process, with your personal life, with your academic life, with your social life? Of course, senior year of high school is super social. So if you can talk about that, that would also be great. It's gonna go again back. Sean, you can start.
Okay, so I think it's really, really important to just not procrastinate. I think procrastination is the worst thing that can happen in senior year, especially when it comes to writing essays, because you just need to keep writing. And I think that's what Murat also advised me to do. Just write anything that comes to your mind. There's this app that I found the other day, which where you need to continue writing, and if you don't, it deletes everything you've written. So you're sort of, so you're forced to keep writing. And I think that's a great app, because that's really what you need with this application process. Because if you don't, because I saw a lot of my friends struggle when it came in December-ish time, because they didn't have anything, because every time they had an idea, they deleted because they didn't think it was good enough. But I think it's really important to just keep writing when it comes to essays. In terms of balancing your social life with your academic life, I think it's important to plan really well and organize your time in a way that you're doing everything that you want to. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much time on your academics, but then you also want to make sure that you want to also make sure that you're pursuing your extracurriculars. So I think it's really important to prioritize in that sense as well. So I was really involved in research in my junior year, but in my senior year, I wasn't as involved with my research because I realized that the college application process was more important. So my advice would be to prioritize, definitely. So, you know, make a list of things that you've got to do and rank them in order of importance and then pursue them in that order.
Yeah, so my advice for people who can't handle their time is just stop sleeping completely. It's not worth it. So you waste a ton of time, and I'm sure anyone in their senior year has stopped sleeping already. I'm just playing. But with regards to prioritizing your time, in fact, mine is very, very contrary to what Sean said. Honestly, I have horrible time managing skills, and with regards to the admissions process, so I wasn't the kind of person to sit down and say, okay, this is time to write. Rather, I just sort of, when you read the prompt, either an idea pops in your head, or I just waited for it to pop in my head. But the moment that happened, I finished my essay in one shot. Like that was generally my philosophy. It wasn't like I structured hours to writing and such like that, and stuff like that. But yeah, the Penn essay, with very specific to Penn and a couple of other universities, is most universities sort of ask why something else. And my philosophy for going around those, and which obviously helped with Penn, was I took something so specific, because you know there's a ton of engineering applicants out there, and they all say, wow, this school has great professors, great faculty, and great people. I sort of went very, very niche. I spoke one of like almost, I think 7 to 9 lines of mine were purely about one professor that I met, that I did an online course from, who specializes in drones, and I spoke about his research, and then I went on to sort of a specific lab that's not like advertised on their main university page. You really want to dig deep and understand what happened behind. So with regards to time management, I don't know, I just did whatever popped in my head. Like if I wanted to work, then sure, I worked, and if I wanted to sleep, then I didn't sleep.
Oh, my mic. Yeah, so time management, I procrastinated every single thing to the last minute. I mean, Alexandra can back me up when I say this. I would copy my essays from one university to another. Like, I would literally just take the Y Brown essay and use it for my Y Georgetown essay and things like that. And I just,
strategy, by the way.
it's actually a really good strategy.
But you got yelled at for.
You just change the names around and things like that. No, but with regards to time management, I think it really is down to understanding that it's all going to be worth it in the end, and the admissions process is, you know, for a lot of universities, most people think that it's a lottery system and it's all about luck, but I believe that it is in your favor, and it all is going to end up being the best possible outcome for each individual applicant. Make sure you sleep. Make sure that you have apps, like Sean said, they really do help. Ensure that with regards to standardized tests and things like that, try and get them out of the way as early as possible. I would recommend the summer before your senior year. That's just my personal preference, because if you're doing standardized tests on top of university applications and on top of, you know, say for example in UK systems, keeping your predicted grades up and things like that, it is a lot to handle. So try and get as much stuff out of the way as possible, as early on as possible. Why university essays as well? You can do your research a lot earlier on instead of leaving those essays to the last minute, because sitting down and trying to do hours and hours of research to find out about a specific lab and do an online course to find out more about a certain professor, those are sort of things that you can get out of the way very early on. So I would recommend just plan in advance and yeah.
Kind of the same thing as you guys just said. So during the admissions process, I think the best thing to do is prioritize. So for me, I had a lot of extracurricular clubs going on. I was like the leader of like a number of different clubs, and I just had to delegate, and that was something that was hard for me because I like to, you know, take control of like different things. But I just had to kind of let that go for a bit and just trust other people to do things, and kind of like lower my course load as much as possible. So my grades, I had to keep them up, but I didn't focus entirely on my IB. I had to like put like most of my focus onto my essays and stuff like that. But then also I didn't drop like everything. For example, I'm someone who has to, you know, like be a bit social to like remain sane. So I made sure that I did manage to like see my friends once in a while as well. But I was really strict with myself. So I told myself, you can go to whatever if you've done this, this, and this. And I think you just have to be really strict with yourself and like don't pity yourself, because at the start I really did that. You just have to like sit down and just do it and like just forget about like how, I don't know, what bad of a position you're in or whatever. Just do it and then get it out of the way and then just get through it. So, yeah.
I think the main thing with me was getting rid of all the extra stuff. So like instead of watching 3 episodes of Grey's Anatomy, I'd watch 1. So that was one thing I had to do and I had to learn how to do. But another thing, I actually really enjoyed keeping busy, and I always had my goal in mind. So I always knew where I wanted to end, and that helped me get through like thousands and thousands of words. And I also enjoyed it. I generally enjoyed writing about like the essays that I wrote. They were really good. It was good writing them. They weren't pretty good. It was good writing them. So Harvard had an open-ended essay, so like you could write about anything you wanted, and I really enjoyed that because I talked about my roots. I talked about the things I enjoy. I linked that with fencing. So it was a journey. I got to learn more about myself and about my roots and my past and what I want to do in the future. So it's actually kind of fun.
Very good. I think one of the most important things is to keep things in perspective when it comes to the admissions process. So I forget which student mentioned getting your standardized testing done, ideally this summer before your senior year. That is the best piece of advice. If you can finalize that, it will give you a lot more time to breathe. You don't want it carrying over until September, October, where you have a lot more responsibilities. Another thing, too, that most students don't understand is that in the US, unlike in the UK, you're not offered conditional acceptances. So when you submit your application, whether it's an early application with a deadline of November 1st, you're applying with the information you have available. So that means your predicted scores if you're doing IB or your predicted A-level results. That's it. So you'll be offered admission based on the information that the universities have at that point. It will not be conditional. For example, okay, you've been accepted to Harvard, but you must achieve at least 4 A stars in your 4 subjects. So if we look at the timeline, all of this happens rather quickly. And if you're extremely well prepared and you do have a top choice, your application should be done by end of September. And you will hear back if you apply early by December 15th. That's it. I think to my best prepared students this year and last year, the ones that had a very clear vision of where they want to go, and they were done with the process, they knew where they were going to enroll in, while other students were just getting started on supplements. So prepare early, keep things in perspective, and understand what the timelines are. I think one of the great things to lighten it up a little bit about American universities is the quirky and fun traditions that really make the school special. So I was wondering if we could start with Alessandra and just go down the line and talk about the fun traditions, what you're most looking forward to outside the classroom, and maybe something that people don't know about Harvard and Columbia and et cetera.
So I went to Harvard for the Admitted Student Weekend, and I talked to current students, and they said in freshman year they have one day. It's called Housing Day. So it's basically in your first year you live in separate dorms. So there's like freshman dorms, and then for sophomore, junior, and senior year you live in houses away from campus. So basically on Housing Day you get sorted into one of these houses, and it's like a massive party, I suppose. But like people from these 12 houses, the upperclassmen houses, come and pick you up from your room, and like everyone is wearing funny clothes, and yeah, it's just a really, really fun day. There are no lessons, so it's quite cool.
I guess one thing I'm looking forward to is a spring concert type thing that they have at Columbia called Bacchanal. So I have a couple of friends who are there right now, and they said that it's like a really, really fun day, so I'm really excited for that.
At Tufts they also have spring concerts, so they have a thing called Spring Fling. But something that I'm definitely looking forward to is they have an annual snowball fight. So Tufts is basically on a hill, and it started off. I think Anushka and Frida should know about this. I can't remember the proper details, but they do have a snowball fight where all of the admissions officers and the dean of undergraduate admissions, they all come out, and all the students and staff have a snowball fight, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, Penn has something called Heyday. I think all the juniors do it, which is your 3rd year of college. They have something called Heyday, which is they distribute these sugar caps, I think, and you all stand in front of, like, there's a lot of concerts and stuff, and at the end of it all, you eat your cap and you throw like a final part of it in the air or something. I don't know, it's funny, and I don't know, it's sugar, so
Yeah, Columbia is a really quirky school, so they have really weird traditions. Like there's one thing that's called Orgo Night. So before the organic chemistry finals, which is one of the hardest courses in America, which is why they do this, the Columbia Marching Band assembles outside all the libraries and starts playing really loud music to try and get people not to study and have fun instead of preparing for their finals the day before it. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
One thing that I guess a lot of the audience is wondering is what was perhaps the benefit of using a service like ours in a way, right? Like, yes, you're already very brilliant. You guys are very smart. I think I remember for some of you, for example, for Juliet, when we were brainstorming your personal statement, you've moved 8 times, right? Which many students feel tempted to write about that in Dubai, but little do they know that every single student in Dubai has parents who've moved many times. So that would not be an original story. So I think that if you can just talk about, maybe even as a process of self-discovery, like what Alessandro talked about, what do you know now that you value that you did not know before starting the entire process? And how did perhaps working with an individual counselor, how did that help you get to that point?
I think the main thing that I learned is that I can do the things I want to do, and the Hale counselors helped me with this because, again, after I got rejected from Brown, the third, I got really upset, and I was in a very, I didn't think I was going to be able to get into university, but they always had faith in me, and they always told me, don't worry, you'll be fine, it'll work out, just have faith in the process. So that's one thing I learned and I value a lot, and they taught me that I can do things. I don't have to set myself back just because I think I'm not good enough. So yeah.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Hale really helped me try to achieve the best. So I probably wouldn't have applied to the amount of really top schools that I did if it wasn't for Hale and how much they believed in me. So that was a good push of encouragement. And they also taught me how to reflect on my experiences a lot, because before, I guess I would just do different things and not really reflect on it, but you really need to do that for your essays. So they really helped me learn how to do that, and that proved successful. And now I probably will be a lot more reflective on the things that I do in the future.
For me, it was Hale's sort of joint values of optimism and realism. That's one aspect of it, because when I was applying to the universities of my choice, then I was very optimistic with regards to having faith in the system, as Alessandra said, but also the fact that, okay, this is definitely a reach school, so that realistic side of it. But I think that, especially as someone who goes to a British school at the moment, there's not necessarily much help with regards to US applications and the US university application process. So if you go to a British school, then there's not usually much assistance over there. So Hale definitely helped, even with regards to, the smallest things, like how to fill out your address on the common application. These are small details that really do make a difference, because if you don't get the mail from the university, then what are you supposed to do, So, yeah, just those small tidbits, it definitely helps. So, but yeah, the way they've changed me with regards to how I view applying for anything and just, reaching my goals, I think that I'm a lot more realistic now, and I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, in terms of my essays, Hale really sort of removed this barrier for my Common App essay, because I remember, I mean, we've all, if you're applying to a selective US university, you have been doing something that is pretty challenging for a long period of time, and when you end up doing those things, you are less impressed by what you have done. Your friends are also less impressed by what you've done. And your inner circle aren't the best people to bounce ideas off, because, I mean, they know, okay, so you've been doing this for a while. It's not that amazing. However, the moment I sat down with Dari and Peter, they were like, this stuff is good. You should write about drones, and you should write about, you know, what you've done with drones and how much it's changed you. And I realized that, okay, so if this is impressing a third person who doesn't know me, and it should be reflected in my application just in the way that it was reflected on Peter and on Dorian, all the other Hale counselors. So bouncing your ideas off a pretty much a stranger, and then letting, sort of opening up to them really, really helps, because it's sort of like when you draw things on a blank piece of paper versus, you know, it's something that's all very crowded, full of prejudgments and what you've done, this, that. I don't know, it's really, really helped with my Common App.
So back in year 11, I was a really cocky and arrogant teenager. So I thought, you know, I could rely on the internet and I wouldn't really need anyone's help with my essays because, you know, how hard could it be? But it's only once I started getting into it that I realized, you know, because the thing is, I do a lot of activities and I'm interested in a variety of fields, so I wasn't sure on what I needed to hone in on. But it was once I talked to Hale that they helped me with emphasizing certain aspects of what I do and really helped me build an application. Because the thing is, you can't mention everything in your application. There are certain things that you've got to, you know, cut out because they might not be of interest to the admissions committee, but you wouldn't necessarily know that, whereas Hale would, because they've been doing this for a while. So they really helped me emphasize, you know, my economics research and my maths background, because it really it contributes to my field, and that's something they like to see.
I think I'd like to close with just one more question before we take questions from the audience. Each of you is very successful, very brilliant, and obviously looking forward to enrolling in wonderful universities this coming September. If you can look out to the crowd now and address the younger students and even address your younger self, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to a year 11 student who's about to enter this process, what would it be?
Probably have faith in the process. That's a huge thing, and everything will turn out fine. You'll end up where you're meant to be, and also just enjoy it. I know it's hard, but just enjoy being busy and writing about yourself and learning so many new things about yourself. It's really cool.
I guess reach for the stars. Don't put yourself down. Know that if you have a better chance of getting in if you apply than if you don't apply at all. So don't hesitate if it's something that you think you really, really want to try at least. And yeah, have fun. Don't take it too seriously, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter where you go. So I would say that, because I know I was really stressed out a couple of years ago, and I thought it was all or nothing. I had to get in, but it's really not, because
be patient. Sorry. There's so many aspects of waiting when it comes down to the US application process. First year, so if you apply early, then you're waiting for your early decisions to come out. Then if you apply regular, then you're waiting for 4 months for your regular decisions to come out. So just ensure that throughout this time you are remaining emotionally intelligent and mentally stable, because at the end of the day, it's all going to be worth it, and you need to have faith in the system, and you need to be patient in order to do that.
Personally, I would say, if I could go back and tell myself to do something, I'd say, do what you love. Although that may sound cliche, a lot of the younger students now, US is the craze. I mean, if you got into an Ivy or one of the top schools there, it's amazing. And we tend to compare ourselves with people who have gotten in. So you look at the people who've gotten in and you say, he did these many more MUN conferences or this much more debate than I did. And I looked at myself back then. I was like, I did a lot of that, because 4 years of my life I just did robotics, and I felt like I was lacking in some places, and I did end up wasting time on that stuff. And yeah, as I said, it was a waste of time. For me personally, a lot of students may like that stuff. What I'm saying is, do exactly what you want to do and resist the temptation to compare yourself, and which will consequently result in you padding your application with things that really will add little to no value if you haven't done them with all your heart. So that's my advice.
Let go of your ego. Don't try and weather the process by yourself, because it is incredibly hard to do it by yourself. Make sure you get a variety of ideas from your family, whether it's your family, your friends, a consultancy group like Hale. Just don't try and go through this whole process by yourself, because you won't be successful if you try to do that. Be open to listening to new ideas from various different people, and it's always great to listen to ideas from whether it's your seniors or just trying to talk to as many people as you can and get a rough idea of where you want to apply to. And don't be afraid to dream, because a lot of people will tell you, oh yeah, that it's unrealistic applying to this school, but as long as you dream big, it's what gets you through the application process, because if you've got that goal in your head, then that's what you're striving towards.
If I could just say one more thing, talking about dreaming big. Sean, not only were you accepted to Columbia, you were also selected as an Eggleston Scholar. So could you maybe just tell us what that means in terms of recognition?
Right, so the Eggleston Scholarship Program is something that's exclusive to the Columbia Engineering School, and it's given to the top 1% of the engineering applicants at Columbia, and it entitles you to a $10,000 research stipend, which you can use for anything. It doesn't have to be limited to your field. It could be to take a summer study class at a school somewhere else in the US, but you can use it for anything. And as well as that, you're also given exclusive access to professors that undergraduates usually wouldn't be able to talk to. So one thing I'm really interested, that I'd love to do, is talk to Professor Krugman, Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate. That's something that I'm really excited to do. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't an Eggleston Scholar. So there are various different scholarship programs at different universities, and that's something that I'd also advise a lot of you to look at, because they can be really useful.
And Juliet, you were selected as a John Jay Scholar, correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, to be honest, I don't know exactly what it is, because it's a bit ambiguous. But basically, you're invited to attend an extra lecture. So I think it's for a whole semester with the rest of the scholars, where you learn about New York City and Columbia integration, just a couple really interesting things, quite philosophical as well. And then besides that, I know that you get prioritized when it comes to grants and research opportunities, and then they hold exclusive events as well for scholars. And then there's the network, obviously, with all the alumni who've been scholars in the past as well.
With that, I'd just like to thank the panelists. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for being so honest. And what I'd like to do is open the floor to questions from the audience. And you can ask questions to individual panelists or either of the moderators. We will circulate a microphone to make it easier to respond. Dari has the mic.
Firstly, I'd like to congratulate all 5 of you. I think you'll have done a remarkable job. I'm reading this piece of paper here, right, and I see your accomplishments. It's fantastic, brilliant. How many of you 5 went to IB? Okay, so my question to you too, was there an advantage going through the IB curriculum versus anything else? To either of you two.
For me, it was definitely an advantage. It depends really on what you're looking forward to. I'd say for people who are looking at more liberal sort of curriculums, IB really, really helps you get this beautiful, well-rounded application ready, because it's a lot like the UK universities. Even the A-level system has the option, you don't have to do it, but you have the option to forego some subjects that, although may sound annoying, like you can forego languages, it really, really, really does strengthen certain aspects of your application and makes you a more worldly person overall. IB really, really did help me. But as far as difficulty goes, I did the maths and physics sort of courses in IB. I'd say if you're if you really want to go into maths and physics and stuff, the A-levels are harder in a more rigorous sense. But yeah, the IB is very, very difficult too, overall.
What I'd add is the fact that in the IB, it's not only 6 subjects that you study, but you also have to do an extended essay CAS. And the extended essay is it's a really good opportunity to go a bit deeper into something that you might be interested in. And the US really likes people who like have like a really good interest in something and have researched something. So that's a really good opportunity to do that. I know that I talked about my extended essay in my Columbia interview, and he was really interested in that. And then CAS is, I don't know if you know, creativity, action, and service. So it just like makes sure that you have a good variety of extracurriculars, which again is exactly what the US wants. So I think like it was really good because everything I could use for CAS, I could use for my US applications as well. So I don't think that doing the IB was like took away from my time that I could have been using to work on the US applications. But then on the other hand, like if you want to do A-levels, I think you have to take 3 subjects.
You can take like 3 to
3 or 4.
5.
But some people just say that if you have A-levels, you have more time to focus on like extracurriculars. I don't know how true that is, but I think that like in IB, you definitely have to make time in order to pass. So yeah, I think all systems would be good. I guess it's what you make of it as well.
Thank you to all the panelists for coming and talking to us today. I wanted to know from all of you, were there any aspects of yourself which you chose to emphasize more than others in your application? And if so, how did you choose what to portray more strongly? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that with regards to what Drew said specifically, when you find something that you're extremely passionate about, then it's very important to highlight that in your applications. So I think we all have like different characteristics which definitely make us stand out as individuals as well as applicants for universities. So if you have something that you're very passionate about and that you definitely want to go into, for example, like my main interest is education rights. So I've done a lot of work with say my grandmother who lives in Islamabad. She has a school for underprivileged kids. So I spoke about that in my Common App essay, and it was a continuous theme throughout all of my supplementary essays as well about how I want to go into education and I want to work with the government to improve education policies. And I've also worked with, and my extracurricular is also directly related to that. So I was the head of my school charity committee, and we specifically work with Dubai Cares, which help to improve education in countries like Ghana and Somalia. And I've worked with the KHDA working on education policy here in the UAE as well. So it's sort of the understanding that you have a specific passion and something that you are very good at and that you enjoy a lot, and just taking advantage of that and making sure that that's very strongly highlighted in your application. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, adding to what Insia said, especially if you want to go into a STEM field or any technical field, I think it's really important to emphasize your technical background because that's what they look for. It's always great to have a liberal artsy background as well, but you really need to emphasize your strong science and maths background because that's primarily what you're going to be doing at the college itself.
Yeah, and I know it's getting a bit long, but just to add, I feel like whatever you're doing, everyone on this panel, I feel, has maybe taken a niche and has focused on that niche to some extent that differentiates them from many other students. And I think a lot of students fall under the illusion that, okay, I'm doing this, no one else is doing this specific thing. Don't fall under the illusion that that is the case, because there's always 1,000 other applicants who are doing. In fact, I named my drone Firefly, and when I looked online, there was another older, there's a company who makes drones called Firefly, and I don't know, it's very, very confusing because there's a ton of people in the world doing the same thing as you. Just take a niche, and I'd say just focus on that niche and make sure that if you took a pool of 100 people, there's around 6 at most doing that exact thing at your caliber. And I think that's a pretty good estimate.
I also want to say, don't be intimidated by, like, you guys are very, very cheesy and everything, but like, for example, me, I wrote a lot about running, and that's something I do like in my free time. I'm not like an Olympiad or anything. So for a long time, I thought I had to be really, really good at one thing. And I like I said, I have such diverse interests, and I don't really know like what I'm like most passionate about or anything. So I never really had like a really like standout niche, I guess. So I just chose to write about things that like were important to me and like that I really enjoyed, and that still worked as well. So don't be intimidated if you don't have that.
Also, I personally focused on my background rather than on my passion for science and things. So I talked about how I'm from Italy and I have strong roots there, and how, like 4 years ago, I didn't speak English. So obviously my journey to learning English and like being in a British school with everyone speaking English. So yeah, I decided to focus on my background rather than my passion for science and what I want to do in the future.
Hi, I'm going to build on the first question that was asked. You already recognize that there are kids here that are as young as grade 9. And in Dubai, we are lucky enough to have many curriculums. And you already recognize that the IB is rigorous and it's going to be time consuming. And I wanted to know, how do the American universities take that into consideration? Or is it really better to get into A levels and AP and save the time into the admissions and the extracurriculars and so on?
I'll take that if that's okay, because that's more of an admissions officer question. So essentially, when you're applying to U.S. universities, it's not only the grades or scores you achieve, but the rigor of your curriculum is extremely important. So not only are you in the British curriculum, but how many A levels do you take? Do you take 4, and then drop down to 3 your final year, or do you take 5 throughout? Generally speaking, the IB curriculum is the most highly regarded, if you do the full diploma, the most highly regarded curriculum that you can complete, and in my opinion, the one that's most compatible with an American education. So the fact that you have to take 6 subjects, the fact that you do have to complete an extended essay, that CAS is integrated, et cetera, as well as theory of knowledge, is a very, very good preparation for excelling at an American university. What we see from a lot of our British curriculum students, especially the science ones, if you take maths, further maths, chemistry, and physics, you're really deficient when it comes to reading comprehension, composition, et cetera, because you don't take those classes the last 2 years. You don't take a foreign language. So those students are always trying to play catch up, and we see this come through actually in standardized test scores when it comes to the reading verbal sections, that those students suffer. Now, if you look at MIT or Caltech or any of the top engineering schools, they also have a very high threshold for verbal achievement in the standardized test scores. So you cannot focus exclusively on science and math at the expense of other subjects. And I see that void a lot, actually, when it comes to the British curriculum applicants. And Murad, I'd like you just add a few notes on your observations.
Yeah. So this is true. I went to an American curriculum school, so I did APs, right? And what I tell like Peter said, is that while the IB does give a better rounded curriculum per se, you have to take the most challenging curriculum available to your ability, right? I took a lot of APs. There's some students that, are doing a competitive athletics that practice 20 to 25 hours per week. It's okay if they take less APs than someone like me who was not doing competitive athletics, right? Again, the US doesn't care about what curriculum you come from. Their admissions officers are well trained to read transcripts and applications from French curriculum, Indian curriculum schools, British curriculum. It's just what you do with the opportunities that your school gives you that matters in the end.
Hey, thank you all for coming out. I just wanted to ask, what was the most important or the most vital thing you did or you thought or you reflect that you needed to do in the last summer you had, so in between your junior and senior year?
In my summer before senior year, I actually visited all of the universities that I planned on applying to. And I think that that's a really important aspect of the application process, especially coming from Dubai if you haven't really visited the US before. Even though I'm a US citizen, I've only been there about 3 or 4 times. But besides that, I think going to the US is very foreign to me, and it's very scary. I'm moving to a place that's a 12-hour flight away from my family and my friends, and that genuinely terrifies me. So with regards to just, getting in the comfort zone and understanding where you're going to be for the next 4 years of your life, it would be really useful to visit those universities. But aside from that, from an academic viewpoint, I think that, as I said earlier, it's really important to try and get all of your standardized testing out of the way as early as possible, and just sort of preparing yourself for the storm that is to come of the application process during sort of your entire first term of your senior year. So, yeah.
During my summer, I went to Brown, and that was obviously to see what college, college life looked like in the US, because obviously that was my second time in the US, and I spent it on a college campus. So I kind of got to see what it'd be like to live by myself, go to lectures, come back, do some homework, and then, yeah, I think that's an important thing, like learn whether you're actually a good fit for the US system and curriculum and life.
I think the summer before your senior year is really important, especially because, and this is true because, you know, admission counselors themselves ask questions about it. I know for a fact, I think Princeton asked what you do the summer before your senior year, so it definitely matters to them. So it's really important that you do something productive, whether that's getting an internship at a place that you'd like to intern at, whether it's a tech firm or a bank or something. Another option is, of course, taking part in a summer program, and a lot of schools in the US offer these summer programs, and it's important to differentiate between which ones actually give you a meaningful experience and which ones don't really give you a meaningful experience there and you don't get your value for money from them. So that's something to look at as well.
What do you do, Sean? Can you tell them?
Yeah, sure. So I took part in a program called the Hampshire Summer Studies in Mathematics, which has an acceptance rate of around 15%. And what they basically do is, so you're there for 6 weeks at Hampshire College, which is a small liberal arts college in Amherst. And you basically take a course that you're really interested in. So I did probability theory. And you work with professors at Hampshire College and at Amherst College on graduate level work, and you do research in that field as well. So the reason I personally decided to take part in that program was because I felt like it would really help me get a strong understanding of probability theory and highlight to the admissions officers that, you know, I am really interested in it, and to the extent that I'm willing to take graduate level work courses in it.
My genuine advice would be, because a lot of the time, summer programs are really, really expensive, and take these two websites down, Coursera.org and edX.org. These are super duper, super useful. Like they take actual stuff that the professors teach in their classroom, and they put them online. And you know, you can just go ham on those courses and learn a lot. Coursera.org, course and era, and edX, which is just edx.org. MIT, Harvard, every school on this panel has a ton of courses up there.
These are free online courses you can take. Some are for credit, and we actually encourage students to do it both during the summer and also if you have time during your school year, it's good enrichment opportunities for you.
I wanted to just find out how many, what was the number of colleges that you all applied to? Because as you said, I mean, there are, if you look at the Ivies, they're probably looking around at the same sort of student, but it's all about having the best fit. So how many colleges would you recommend applying to in your experiences? I mean, I'm sure all of you applied to a different number. What was it?
I applied to 10 schools in the US, and then I also did UCAS, so I applied to 5 in the UK, just to like have my options. In the US, I think I applied to 3 or 4 Ivy Leagues, I don't remember how many. But I was really careful about making sure that every single school on my list was a school that I genuinely wanted to go to, because when it comes to writing your essays, you have to have a good reason. Like if you just write, I want to go because it's a really good school, you won't get in. So I think it was really important to know exactly why I wanted to go to those schools, and to not like apply to too many schools, because again, like you won't have time to put like enough meaning in your essays. So yeah.
I applied to 14 schools. 3 of them were Ivies. So I put, again, my emphasis on fit rather than academic prestige. I liked all of my schools. I would have been really happy to go to all of my schools. So I think that's the main thing.
And if I may just say something on Alessandra's list. Something we emphasize at Hale is balance, and we have to be risky. We cannot be careless with our students, right? So Alessandra applied to a wide range of schools, not only Ivy Leagues. She applied to schools like Emory, Clark, etc., that have significantly lower acceptance rates than the Ivy League. But Clark, for example, has one of the best psychology programs in the US. She's interested in neuroscience, right? Makes sense for her. So again, it's a matter of approaching the process in a way that the fit matters, but also selectivity matters, and keeping a reasonable, well-balanced college list is also important.
Yeah, I applied to about 13 to 15 schools. I actually sort of went against what Murad just said because I don't have the list in front of me, but I think that I applied to more reach schools than I did like safety schools. But I applied to a lot of target schools, which I felt like I had a solid chance at. So as we all spoke about earlier, do reach for the stars, but be realistic as well.
Just in terms of putting together your college list, I think one thing that a lot of people overrate are rankings. They look at sites like QS and US News, and they just apply to the top 15. But I think that's a really bad idea because, like all the other panelists have emphasized, it's all about fit. And you might be a great fit for a school like MIT, but that doesn't mean you're a good fit for a school like Columbia or Harvard. So I think it's really important. What rankings are important. The reason people use rankings are primarily to make an initial list and look at where schools fall in terms of selectivity. So I'd say use rankings to pick out, to look at reach schools and match schools and safety schools, but don't look into them too closely. Like don't say, I'm only going to apply to this school because it's second for economics at blah, blah, blah. Make sure that you look beyond that and look at the actual program offered at that school and how it fits in with your interests.
Just a little more specifically to add on to that, with regards to the rankings. So there's a ton of ranking websites out there. Rankings are super useful for people who are doing graduate programs. If you look at the criteria that they use for rankings, QS, which Sean just mentioned, uses something called index citations and H-index citations. This is super useful for students who are applying to graduate programs, because at the end of a graduate program, you come out with a thesis, and you have to get citations on that from other well-renowned researchers. For an undergraduate program, not so much. It doesn't matter how many citations your professor had in that university, and that's at least 35% of what the rankings are based on. Graduate programs rankings, undergrad, not so much. Undergrad, more culture.
In just terminology, undergraduate is the first 4 years of education in the US that students apply to after their last year of high school. Graduate programs are master's, doctorate degrees that they do after college.
So I recently had a talk with the Harvard co-chair, Alan Cohen. I'm not sure if you know him. He has been helping me develop my university applications. I'm in grade 10 and IG student. And he spoke about this, he called it a spike. It's like the one specific thing that caught the eye of, that catches the eye of, the people who review your applications. So getting to the point, in the UAE, it's kind of hard for me as a engineering student, as a robotics, I'm interested in robotics as well. And it's kind of hard for me to get an internship at the age of 15 in most companies, as I think there's an age limit over here according to the law. So how would you suggest I go about getting that, that rate of development, that unique thing that sets me apart from other students with inconveniences such as age and money?
So I think I'm qualified to answer this question because I genuinely felt the same way for such a long time. If you go to California, San Francisco, Silicon Valley is right next to you, and you have a ton of opportunities, and everyone in that area was a student just like you who didn't have opportunities, so they're more than willing to offer. Over here, I wouldn't say that's the case. It's very, very difficult, and I agree with you on that point, but I'd still say what I did for opportunities, because I recently applied to a competition called the Drones for Good, and I was the youngest one over there. And that might sound a bit shocking, but the only things that I did was I asked for help. No one in this, no one in the UAE is accustomed to lending a hand often, but what I did was I went and I pitched my sponsorship proposals to certain companies, and I went and and I sort of taught at this robotics education firm. And I'm sure that as a robotics student, you know that UAE has tried to put a lot of emphasis on robotics, but it's only on the competitions, which means that at an average level, all engineering students have, say, built a robot that moves, does task A, B, and C. So it's, again, very difficult to differentiate yourself as robotics students. What I would say is look behind the veil, and nobody has explicitly said, okay, I'll help you out, I'll give you this much funding for this project or idea that you have. But if you have a decent idea, trust me when I say this, reach out to tech companies or stuff like that, or educational companies, or your school even. Show them that you have something that you can work with, and trust me when I say this, they will help you, without a doubt.
Thank you so much. That was very good input all through. I have a question which is about subject selection in the IB curriculum. And while it's a very well-rounded curriculum, but if there's a student, and my question is directed more towards the engineering students, you have a restriction in terms of how many you can pick up as science subjects. So for instance, if somebody wants to do computer science and wants to take up computer science as one of the subjects, then you would have to either drop chemistry or physics, and you don't want to drop any of those. So normally we would think for engineering, one would have to do maths, physics, chemistry, all three subjects. But if you want to also pursue computer science, then you need to drop one of those. So how did you face this kind of a challenge in subject selection, and how did you address that?
I definitely did, and especially if anyone over here is enrolled in the MYP curriculum, this is also another big problem, because a lot of parents complain with regards to the fact that I can't take all of the sciences and I have to, say, take drama or music or this and that. This was a problem for me in DP, but I got around it by, you have to take one humanities subject, but as far as the sort of flexibility in my IB school goes, which is DIA, you can take 4 HLs and you can stick with 4 HLs till the end, until you write your exams. That really, really helped me for the first 2 semesters. Then I dropped it for research sakes. But I understand where your viewpoint comes from. I mean, graduates from years before us have only taken maths, physics, and then done successfully in engineering. I just say just forgo that viewpoint for now, because your child will definitely benefit from the comprehensive English curriculums and language curriculums that IB has to offer. And trust me when I say this, this will help them. Chemistry, say they want to learn a specific thing in chemistry, either take an online course, or I'm doing physics right now and chemistry, but if I wanted to do biology, chemistry has an option which is biochemistry, which combines both of them. And you can take that option. You have the freedom to choose up to 4 options in all sciences. Take those options and ace those options, or take an online course. Taking 4 HLs and taking 4 HL sciences is not a wise decision, purely for the sake of time management and how much you end up acquiring out of it overall.
And also to make a note on that, for the US admissions purposes, they know the limitations that IB curriculum students experience in science selection. What we tell our students, if you are serious about engineering, definitely take physics. You do not have to take chemistry and biology, regardless of what you want to go into. Once you apply to the School of Engineering, it is easy to transit within engineering fields. So you can apply actually undecided engineer and then specialize in either computer science or mechanical engineering, civil, etc. So again, they do understand, again, admissions officers look at this from a well-rounded perspective. They will never penalize a student for something he couldn't take if the school did not offer that option.
Oh yeah, and just one more thing I completely forgot to add. I didn't take computer science. Most of my research is computer science, and I had the option of doing my extended essay in computer science. I ended up doing it in physics, but trust me, the extended essay is a huge component that the universities absolutely love. Do it in whatever subject you want, and make sure that comes through in your interviews and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, great. So I just want to begin by thanking all of our panelists here and congratulating all of you on your acceptances. You were all brilliant. I don't need to say that. I think everyone's expressions show that. Dhruv, Sean, Insia, Juliet, Alessandra, you are just a few of the many, many students that we have worked with. Today, we have hosted an Ivy Insider panel, and these students have given you an insight into just some of the successes we have seen. I want to stress that more than about school, we work on the philosophy of fit, and I think that was addressed a few times during the panel. In addition to that, I know we have an entire list of takeaways and inspiring things that you have said, insightful quotes, inspiring things that everyone can take home today. But one thing that really stood out to me is it's not about where you go ultimately, it's about who you are. And that is something that all of you are a shining example of, so well done. For the next 15 minutes, and I would like to introduce our head of test prep services, ACT and SAT tutoring. Some of you may have seen his profile in the flyers that you are holding. He will introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about that. After that, the panelists and all Hale counselors will be available in the foyer, so you can speak to them directly about any questions that you have or any things that you would like to learn more about. All right?
Hey, it's great to meet everyone, and thank you so much for coming by. This is an amazing panel, and I'm just incredibly glad and very, very privileged to be here. Just came from the United States, so just a little bit jet-lagged, but very, very happy to be here. Certainly, one of the reasons why I'm here and why Peter has brought me here is that I happen to have 99th percentile scores in both the ACT and the SAT, and I'm certainly proud of that. But I'll tell you that one of the biggest things that I am proud of instead is the more than 1,000 people that I have helped, the more than 1,000 students that I've been able to teach, to provide tutoring, test prep, and education services to. And I can tell you as well that I haven't just been an ACT and SAT tutor. I have also been a public school teacher where I was actually licensed as an AP statistics teacher. It was a very, very proud moment that I was able to do this. I can tell you as well that just like what Peter had said, the educational philosophy that we believe in the United States is not really about just information. This is certainly a problem, I think, that you see with a lot of different test prep companies that only really provide you maybe some facts, maybe provide things that you could probably just read anywhere else. I don't necessarily believe in that. What I believe instead is learning. That is getting the entire mind involved and actually understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And I'll say too that the SAT and ACT maybe don't have the best reputation. Certainly there's a lot of talk right now about if the tests actually do measure what it is that you're learning in school, and I think that there's certainly some merit to that. But what I would rather focus on is the necessity that you have to have in terms of your ability to read, to write, and to do the math, which is what these tests are meant to do. This is what my team and I have been developing. We really do believe that the courses that we're coming up with right now are the absolute best that you can find in the UAE. And the simple reason why is that it's not just going to provide you the information that you need to be able to take these tests well. You're also going to be able to learn the strategies that you need to answer these questions better. So I can just give you a quick example. When I was studying for the test, I actually didn't have the very best score when I first took it. And I actually am an IB diploma holder. I actually have my IB diploma. So I always thought that I definitely had an academic advantage and I had an edge. Shouldn't be that hard to do well on this test. The truth, though, is that it was a little bit hard. And it definitely did make me question why it was that it was a little bit more challenging. I would say, though, that it's not just that the material itself is more challenging. It's just also, too, that there are certain ways that the questions are asked that you have to understand, you have to be able to unpackage. So what we focus on is not just the questions in terms of the material, but also the strategies that you need to be able to answer these questions right. So with that, I can tell you that when you sign up with Hale and when you enter into our courses, whether it be a long-term course, a short-term course, any sort of private tutoring, what you'll get is, of course, a 99th percentile score, which is important. But you're also going to get a licensed teacher who has been licensed for the AP, And you're going to be getting a teacher who doesn't just want to provide you information or even knowledge, but learning, which is actual understanding of the material and actual understanding of dialogue that will allow you to really excel and achieve on these tests. So with that, I'm very excited to be here, and I thank you guys so much for having me. I actually am going to have a panel way back over there in the right, and if you guys wanted to see me and maybe ask some more questions, I will certainly be there to answer some questions as well. And I thank you very much. I really do want to be here to be able to help you guys achieve your dreams and the high scores that you guys are certainly going to achieve. So with that, thank you so much.